All right. So I am definitely this is definitely interesting for me going back and reading a lot of these. This one is titled Neglect, and I think this poem was when I talked last time about how in both Hurt and Didn't, we talked about how part of the breakup was my fault, and I recognize that. But in this poem, I think I put all the blame onto me, and that's probably not something you want to do, but I'll go ahead and read it. It was always me. I shattered what was to be. I don't ask for pity. I wish she heard my plea. Watched you that night. I didn't know what I'd done. Watched myself lose that fight until she was gone. I sat and reflected, an awful detective. I knew that the answer, it was never her. I wish I could write for her to read, but every poem in sight is filled with me. That one's interesting because I put all the blame on me. Said, watched myself lose that fight, talking about that night again. That night when I felt like everything kind of split, you know. And then I talk about how every poem in sight is filled with me. And so this stems from a little fear of mine that I'm like overly narcissistic. And that's something that I don't want to do because obviously I write about how I feel. I mean, I can't write, even if I write about how somebody else's feel, it's ultimately going to be how I feel they feel. You know what I'm saying? And so it's kind of an irrational fear of mine because I think if you're afraid that you are something, you're probably not, you know, in most cases. So if that's any comfort to anybody out there who thinks that they're a bad person, the fact that you are afraid that you might be a bad person shows that at least you don't want to be. And I think that's a step in the right direction. I know that's very broad and very general, but I thought it was important to say in the moment. Every poem in sight is filled with me. So in a lot of these poems, I'm writing them in kind of a bad headspace because I'm trying to get out of that headspace. And so this is me overcompensating for my grief by putting all the blame on me because I feel like I somehow deserve it because of what happened. And it's kind of like what would you call it? Incorrect blame, I don't know, put on myself. There's a lot to break down in this poem, but obviously it wasn't just me, you know. I never made an audible plea, you know. I wish she heard my plea. Well, I didn't exactly make one, you know. I did watch her that night, and I didn't know what I'd done that night. I did watch myself lose that fight, and I did watch her till she was gone. I did sit and reflect, but I didn't always know the answer, and I certainly didn't know it was her. Or was not her, in this case. And I oftentimes wrote these poems thinking if she could just read them, she'd understand. But some things are simply not meant for others to read, you know. And then every poem in sight is filled with me. That's probably the biggest problem I have with this poem is that it's okay to write about how you feel. You know, it doesn't mean you're a bad person because you're writing about you necessarily. I mean, oftentimes I wrote how I felt about other people. I guess if you could take anything away from this is that don't ever doubt how you feel. It's okay. It's okay to feel. Just as long as you don't let it start to affect who you are. Don't ever let that happen. When that starts happening, well, it's your job to kind of face that emotion head on, you know, and you gotta work through it, you know, because there's nothing worse than allowing yourself to lose yourself because of something that happened to you. And it's when I say that it's okay to feel, but don't let it take over your life. You're worth so much more than that. So if that's the one thing I can say, it's that. Thank you for stopping by, and I hope to see you again next time.